You're watching Wish TV, News 8 and 11 with Phil Sanchez.
Welcome back. The Supreme Court's decision to overturn Roe v. Wade has raised fears that it could affect the fertility industry. Concerns have been raised about the possibility of new uncertain legal areas for states to interfere with the process known as in vitro fertilization. Joining me on tonight's Unfiltered conversation is Dr. Stephanie Boyes, an expert on reproductive technologies law and a professor at IUPUI. Stephanie, good to see you. In a broad sense, what will the court's decision have on the fertility industry, in your opinion?
Well, I don't think that there's an easy answer to that because it really depends on the specific laws and the language that each state uses in any laws that it passes, now that there is sort of an open door to regulating abortion.
Should fertilization clinics be concerned about the possibility of wrongful death lawsuits because of tossing out embryos?
Yeah, again, I think it depends on the laws that are passed. What we should be looking at right now, I think, is Oklahoma. Oklahoma currently has a law that defines life as beginning at conception. And so any state law that defines life as beginning at conception or bans abortion post-fertilization would definitely have an impact on IVF clinics. And right now in the United States, we don't have much regulation at all for the fertility treatment services. And so couples and individuals that have gone through IVF have cryopreserved embryos, leftover embryos that they had going through treatment, and now situations have changed. They've created the family that they wanted, or they've divorced, or one or both of the partners has passed away. And so we have, estimates are well over 1 million cryopreserved embryos in the United States. And so I think IVF clinics are very concerned about what they can possibly do with those embryos, some of them dating all the way back to, the late 1980s.
So that being said, do you foresee things changing? Will states like Indiana try to limit in vitro fertilization procedures because of the Dobbs ruling? I
absolutely believe that they can. Under the legal language of the case, they can limit IVF, and there have been some lawmakers who have spoken out in favor of limiting IVF.
So what advice would you give to families who may have already started the process of IVF and are now uncertain what's to come?
Well, I really feel for those families because going through fertility services, going through IVF is already a very stressful, emotional time. And so this just compounds that. I would say go forth, don't let it deter you, but do be mindful. And I've always actually told individuals or couples that they should be very mindful of the fact that they might have excess embryos left over. A lot of times when couples go into IVF, they're just thinking, we want to have a child, we want to get pregnant, and they don't even consider the fact that they might have leftover embryos to cryopreserve. And so it becomes very stressful once they've created the family that they want, if they have leftover embryos, and trying to decide, do they want to put the embryos up for adoption, or do they want to have more children than they intended? Do they want to donate the embryos to research? At this point, those are all options, including just sort of, letting the embryos thaw naturally, and discard of them. But if states were to define embryos as having rights, I think at that point it would probably become illegal to just destroy or discard of embryos. And so couples really need to think through when they're considering IVF, if that's something that they're willing to, deal with emotionally in the future.
Stephanie, I have 30 seconds left. Is this a conversation that you think is being had right now across the country, geared towards this and what might happen since this decision came down last week?
I certainly hope so. I certainly hope that lawmakers are considering this in any legislation that they're thinking about, because if not, and they leave the language vague, it's going to go to judges and it's just going to be a mess across the country.
Dr. Stephanie Boyes, an expert on reproductive technologies law and an IUPUI professor, I should say. Thank you for joining us. We appreciate you taking some time.